Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us. I'm Kevin Hensel. Today we have the opportunity to talk to State Representative Josh Shapiro. Again, thanks for joining us.
Good to be with you, Kevin.
Well, the final days of the current legislative session are winding down, but there's a new term about ready to start. What are some of the issues you're going to be focusing on when you return to Harrisburg in January?
Well, obviously, job creation is the number one job that we have in the new legislature. And part of that is going to be getting our fiscal house in order, dealing with pretty significant budget deficit that we anticipate facing. We're going to have to work through those issues, but make no mistake, jobs in the economy are job number one for us here in the legislature.
Again, every year it seems as though the budget and making sure important programs like education are funded could be vitally important this time, or come spring.
No question. I mean, look, Governor-elect Corbett ran on the pledge of cutting, not raising taxes. The Republicans captured the majority in the State House by a very, very sizable margin. Now, I'm willing to work with Republicans. I'm willing to reach across the aisle, as I have done during my 6 years in office, where I agree with them and work with them to try and solve these problems. And where I think they're heading in the wrong direction, I'm also going to stand up respectfully and challenge their positions. I think that's what our democracy is all about. But we will have to collectively come together in the initial 6 months of this session and deal with a budget deficit anywhere from 2.5 to, some people project, $5 billion short. And to give the folks at home an understanding, at a $28 billion budget, if you lop off $3, $4, $5 billion, that's real money. Yeah. And real people are going to get hurt when you begin to make cuts. And while I certainly want to cut the waste out of Harrisburg, and I've not just talked about that, I've delivered on those efforts to eliminate waste here in Harrisburg, there is some more waste to be eliminated. Now, the question is there $5 billion worth of waste, or do you begin to cut into valuable programs like education and other important investments in our future? And I think that's where a real discussion has to happen between Democrats, Republicans, between the legislature and Governor-elect Corbett, and I look forward to being a part of that discussion.
Well, when it comes to health care, you were one of the leading voices in the legislature for reform and trying to make sure everyone has access, or as many people as possible. Will that be another high priority issue when the legislature returns?
I think, of course, and largely because the new federal law, which I know has become something of great controversy, particularly during the most recent election cycle. But the feds passed a law, and the states now need to implement it. So whether we like it or not here in Pennsylvania, we need to implement it in a way that works for Pennsylvanians. And so I've been proud to be a part of both a White House task force as well as Governor Rendell's executive branch authority on coming up with an implementation strategy. I would hope that Tom Corbett would continue that type of an effort. And certainly if he'd like my input, I will be proud to offer that input. But we need to have a cohesive strategy on how to implement the new law, in particular how to establish exchanges here in Pennsylvania so that everyone has access and has affordable access to care. So I'm going to be looking forward to continuing to work on those efforts. It has to be done in a bipartisan manner. And again, whether you're the most conservative Republican or the most liberal Democrat, whether you love the new law or hate the new law, the reality is it's law, and we in the states are now in a position where we have to implement it, and I'm going to look forward to being a part of that implementation effort.
Well, it's again an issue we will hopefully talk to you about in the future. Very, very important issue. But you're also a leading voice when it comes to government reform, and clearly the public wants that to continue because we have made some progress. What are some of the areas you will be targeting?
Well, absolutely. We've got to continue our efforts to reform. We've got to reduce some of the wasteful costs here in the state capitol, here in this building and in Harrisburg. We have to continue our efforts to create greater transparency in our process. Under our leadership in the Speaker's Reform Commission and other things I've done, we now have transparent online databases to track the spending. We have a $200 million legislative leadership surplus that I have talked about. I exposed as chairman of the audit committee. I've talked about returning. We've returned a portion of it. We need to get rid of that money and reinvest that in meeting the needs of the people of Pennsylvania. It belongs to the taxpayers. It doesn't belong to 3 or 4 or 5 legislative leaders here in this building. We need real campaign finance reform where we can cap the contributions that the special interests are pouring into the system. I think that unfortunately perverts the process and shuts out the voice of the people, and instead the special interest voice shines through. I think we need, as we approach redistricting, to do so in a way that is less partisan and keeps communities of interests together, municipalities together. And I'll try and be a voice on that as well. And I think, to the extent that Governor-elect Corbett moves forward on many of the promises that he made in the campaign to reform Harrisburg, I'll certainly be an arm on the other side of the aisle he can reach across and work with on reform issues that I think make sense for not only the Capitol, but in helping deliver on the type of change we need for the people of Pennsylvania.
And we'll certainly continue to need the people of Pennsylvania to be involved in the process and make their voice heard as well.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you very much, Josh Shapiro, for joining us, and all of you for watching.